Hey everybody, Josh from Populi here. You're going to watch our video on an overview of the DoED integration for financial aid and Populi. I wanted to let you know at the beginning here, this is the shorter version of that video. There's a longer version. We're going to link that up in a card and down in the description. So if you want to dig into this at all, or if you get to a point in this video and you're wondering if there's more information about a particular thing, it might be contained over in that other video. We wanted to try to keep this as short as possible. So I'm going to end this introduction right now. We're going to spend some time today talking about the financial aid setup with the Department of Ed integration. We have an integration that allows us to establish a connection between your instance of Populi and then the Department of Education. So that means you're communicating with SAIG, with SEG, with COD as well. And you're able to pull down information, upload information there. Essentially what that means is you're going to get things like ICERs, MPNs, aid counselings, all that kind of stuff flowing down into your Populi instance. And then you're also going to be able to originate awards and disbursements from directly in Populi. The big advantage of this is that it means that you don't have to set everything up over in COD and working in Ed Express, Ed Connect, all that, and then come over to Populi and re-enter that stuff. You're able to get those ICERs down, create awards on students, send those awards to COD, get responses, all within Populi, instead of working in parallel with, say, Ed Express and Ed Connect on one hand and then Populi on the other. So it's a labor-saving setup to be able to manage things this way. So we're going to spend a little time just kind of going through the workflow there. We're going to go through it once as sort of a flyby, and then we'll dig in a little more depth, and you'll see how that works. The setup is pretty similar to the way that things work if you're not integrated. So if you're already familiar with that, you'll see sort of the typical way that things go there. A lot of the workflow is similar with some notable differences that we'll get into. So let's do a quick flyby. Here's the process, and we're going to go over this a lot, so get used to it. What happens in Populi is that you're going to get an ICER that comes into the system. We're communicating with SEG, COD, the DoED, all those via SEG basically. And then you're going to get ICERs and other things coming into the system. But the starting point is that ICER. That ICER comes into the system. You set the ICER up so that it connects to the student. That creates an aid application. That aid application you manage and get everything set up. That will contain your cost of attendance, EFC, all that information there on the student's profile. So with the aid application done, you're going to manage various things there. With that figured out, you're going to then be able to go in and create those awards on each student's profile. You'll create the awards and disbursements. And then once you've got those all in place, you'll be able to sync those to COD. That'll originate those awards with those amounts in COD. You'll wait for responses from COD, get those, make any corrections that you need to. Once you have those all done, ready to go, as you approach those disbursement dates there, you'll be able to include your first round of disbursements in a batch. You'll create that batch with those disbursements. And then once you walk through the steps of that batch, you'll actually post that money to the students' profiles. So that will, attach to any invoices that they already have there. It'll basically end up affecting their balance there with that money. Then you're able to refund. You're able to refund to students and to the source there. And those two steps work a little bit differently. And we'll go over that in the video. Let's have a look at some of the basics here. When you get your integration turned on, you'll see that you get this DoED tab under financial aid, DoED. So this is one of the big initial differences here. You'll have a tab here that has your awards that are all showing up within the years that you've designated in your settings and all that. Once you're set up, you'll get that. You'll get your SEG log here. And then under settings here, you'll have an additional DoED integration setting as well. You'll be able to, one of your financial aid folks, someone with the financial aid role, will be able to come in here and set up these various fields. So this is really the major kind of setup here, is just entering in all of these bits of information so that you can turn on this integration and then start communicating with SEG and COD and all that. It's fairly straightforward. You're able to look that up, get that, or look up what's required here, and then you'll be able to get that information, come in here and do that. One thing that I do want to note here is just the way that your SEG password works, your SAIG password. As you probably know, I believe it expires on a rotating 90-day basis. So one of the big things to be aware of is that will expire. You'll need to go in, get a new password, come here and input that. If you find yourself in a pickle where you're not able to communicate to SEG, that's most likely what's going on. And that's managed right here. Financial aid settings, DoED integration. The way to think about this is that everything begins when you get an ISER. Once you're set up, those ISER files will just flow directly in, and they'll land right here under financial aid applications, ISERs. So you can see we have a number of ISER batches already in the system here. This is really where things start. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this batch right here. It's an older batch. And we're going to see that we've already got someone in here who's all linked up. That's this person right here. They're all set and ready to go. I'm going to click next though, because we want to see what it looks like when someone hasn't already been linked. So this student here has a ISER on file in this batch. It's not linked to anyone yet. You can see what will happen though. We'll get an option if Populi thinks that there's a person already in the system to whom this should be linked, then it will make that suggestion. You can see that we're looking at a couple items here. We're looking at the last and first name. We're looking at social security number and birth date. So you can see that this person has a matching birth date like we see right down here. So this is a pretty strong match. The only thing that would make it stronger is if this profile already had a social security number set on it, then we would be matching on all three of those things. And you'd be able to see that here, of course. So our other option is to create a new person. Let's say this person just isn't in Populi yet. You'd be able to create a new person there, or you'd be able to link to someone else. And that would just be typing in another name there and then making that selection. What we're going to do right now, though, is just click on this. That's a good match as far as we're concerned. And then we'll look at a couple of other things here before we actually import this ISER to that person's profile. Two things will happen when we import that ISER. First, a new admissions lead will be created. So if this person already has a lead, then this is going to create a new admissions lead there. You can choose who on your staff, your admissions staff, you want to associate this with. They'll be the representative that's managing that lead. A new aid application will be created. See that there? Again, we can assign that to someone in your aid department who's going to handle that. And then this is an important one here. You're going to also be able to choose the aid classification for them. Okay, I'm not going to spend a lot of time right now talking about exactly what that aid classification is, but just make a note of that. The aid classification that you get here enables you to kind of start to automate some things about the way that Populi works. So this is a good thing to be aware of. You can make this selection here, then when the person comes in, they'll already have this aid application this aid classification associated with their aid application, right? So just to back up a little bit, we've got an ICER coming into Populi via the integration. That ICER is going to be connected with this person. Then when we connect this ICER with that person, we're generating a new aid application. Those are the important steps for this workflow. So now that we have that all set up, we're going to go ahead and just choose one of those aid classifications there. And then we'll go ahead and import. Okay, so we have this ICER linked to this profile. We're going to go ahead and go to the profile, and we'll go to financial, and then financial aid. Nothing shows up right here. This is an old ICER, so it's for a previous aid year. So what you'll see here is when I go to that aid year, and you'll just have to forgive that there, we've got that aid application already begun over here. Remember, my classification that I chose was full-time undergraduate. You can see that's what's available here. So typically, once we've connected that ICER to a person here in Populi and imported it in here, created that aid application, we would get both the cost of attendance and the EFC, right? So we've got those two important pieces of data that we're able to demonstrate there on the profile. You'll also see if we scroll down a little bit there that this ICER shows up here. This here, you can see that we have all of that ICER information. We're able to show all possible fields, see various bits of data about that ICER right there. What I want to show you next is on the aid application. Let's go ahead and click into edit here. You can see a couple things. Obviously, we could go in and put in an EFC. I'll just go ahead and throw some numbers in there. For that. And then, so that's where your EFC from the ICER would typically just generate automatically. Over here on the left, we've got our verification. This is where you're able to set the verification, the type of verification here, and then whether or not this student is in progress, completed, rejected, exempted, or whatever. You'll see that we have that aid classification again. So if you don't set the aid classification when you're importing the ICER, you're able to come in here and edit the aid application and then choose the correct classification. That classification has some other effects here, such as pulling in different components on this application. This classification doesn't have any components set up for it automatically, but you're able to set those up. Those aid application components are essentially just the steps that you all take with the student. In some cases on your own, in some cases you're requiring specific things from the student in order to prepare their aid application and get them ready to receive aid. When you associate these components with an aid application, then you'll see those components show up right here under the aid application right here. Okay, and basically what the value of this is just a checklist for you to know where the student is in terms of their preparation. So this is still pending. This scholarship application is still pending, but we could click on that and then we could go in and set that to accepted and then save. Now they've got a check mark for that. So you could really easily see where this student is in the process. Once we've gone through and figured all that stuff out, we have all those different steps for them finished, then we would be able to just see that real easily right there. What I'm going to do next is go to the student view of the aid application. It's good to be able to see this from the student's point of view. We'll come back here a little later as well, but just so you know, if you're able to add those components, you're able to indicate specific instructions for them. So if you have something that you want them to do, you can include those instructions there. Those instructions could even be upload a file, and then students would be able to upload a file. So if you're requesting certain kinds of documentation, whatever it is, you'd be able to see that right here. They can also ask specific questions right there. And then you could populate certain custom fields to show up as well. Let's go back to that admin view. The next big step on our workflow, and let me just rehash a little bit. We've been from ICER to aid application connected to a specific profile. Then we've seen a little bit about that aid application. So the next step is to go ahead and create awards and disbursements on their profile. That's what we're going to do now. To do that, I'm going to click on Add for awards here. And then I'm going to choose an aid type. I'm going to do a Pell Grant for this one. You can see that when I do that, we automatically pull in the amounts for Pell. We have those Pell tables included in the system. That's the closest that we get to any kind of auto packaging though. Only Pell does that. Currently, the status that we've got here on this award is set up, means it's invisible to student. Let's look at these other statuses though. The big one would be offered and then also accepted there. Depending on how you manage it, some schools have things set up so that they usually already have an acceptance from a student, or they accept these things by default. So they might just start with an accepted status, but typically folks are going to have an offered status set there. Let's look down at these scheduled disbursements. The scheduled disbursements right here, what we're seeing here is the most manual way that you can manage these disbursements. So we're going to actually just real quickly pop in a date here. Let's say 09/24/2015. And then the amount, we'll go ahead and say $3,000. And then we'll click Add Scheduled Disbursement. You can see that that's added that disbursement right there. Quick note on that. One thing to keep in mind is that your aid classifications can also be associated with aid year schedules. When you associate an aid classification with an aid year schedule, you're able to say, for Pell Grants, I want to have the disbursement date set as X in the fall and Z in the spring. That means that when you come here, when you have an aid classification in place with an aid year schedule, you're going to automatically populate those dates here. That's the closest thing to kind of automation here that we have as far as that packaging process goes. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Okay, so now you can see that we have an award that's set up here. Let's go back to that student view. We're not actually going to see anything particularly different here, but I just want to demonstrate that this grant is now showing up, so that is different. But then if we were actually logged in as this student, we would be able to see an accept or decline option here. So they would actually have the buttons to be able to do that. And then the status there, if they were to accept, would go to from offered to accepted there. So just to back up a little bit, we've got the ICER connected to a student that created an aid application, and then we ended up with an award with disbursements on it. We created that award and we put disbursements on it. So that's really the first several steps there. You would do this with all the other awards that a student's going to get. The next step that we're going to go to is the actual process of syncing these awards to COD. Let's assume that this student did accept. So this would obviously, you wouldn't have to manually change this, although you can. So we're going to go ahead and change that status to accepted for the award and then save. And now you can see things are starting to look a little bit different. So we've seen the ICER connected to a person, which creates an aid application. Then we've created the awards and disbursements on their profiles. And now we're going to go and see what it looks like to sort of walk through some of the aspects of syncing these awards to COD. So to go to that next step, we're going to go up to financial at the very top, financial aid, and then we're going to go to DoED. Now you can see here, I've set a couple of filters already, kind of sneakily here, so that we're looking at exactly this student. What you would typically see is you would default to the current aid year, and then you would just see a list of all the students who have accepted awards for that aid year with their disbursements listed and all that. The other thing that would be different is hopefully with all of the details that you've added for these students, that we're going to have a checkbox there that you would be able to check, and this award would be syncable. So what you would do is you would click that option to sync this student and then any other awards there, and then we'd be able to go up here and click sync to COD. And then, of course, you would have the option to actually conduct that sync at that point. Okay, so let's talk about what happens then. That gets pushed over to COD, COD receives it, and then you're waiting on a response. So what would happen then is your COD status would go from unsynced to pending, and then you would be waiting on a response from SAG. That response will show up here. You can use these filters to pinpoint that. So you can go to COD status is pending, add that. You would just show those awards there. But then you can also see that come in via the SAG log over here. So this just has everything that's coming back from SAG. So this would be, again, those MPNs, aid counselings, ICERs show up here as well. And then also communications. Once you've attempted to originate awards and disbursements, you would get a response from COD that says, these awards and disbursements have gone through, these have been rejected, these need attention, all that kind of stuff is going to come back here. From there, the process just involves you going in, fixing any little errors that need correction, resyncing those awards, getting responses back, all of that kind of thing. The goal is to get everything locked down, accepted, ready to go, so that then you're able to include those students, those awards and disbursements, or specific disbursement, in a disbursement batch. The disbursement batch is the next step that we'll talk about. To create a disbursement batch, we're going to go to financial aid, and then under awards here, we're going to go to disbursement batches right here. This little number is just showing us how many batches are currently open. We're going to start a new batch. You can see here that we've got Pamela up at the top here. We're going to simplify what we're looking at here a little bit by checking none. And then we'll go here and say that we're just looking at the Pell Grants. Okay, so now we've limited that further, and then we could limit it even further by setting a different date here. Now we're able to check the box here for her and include her in a batch. That takes us directly into the batch that we just created. We've got only Pamela here, and then over here on the right, we've got our setup and then each of our steps after that, okay? These are all the steps that you have to complete in order to move someone from, just kind of the initial batch status here into posted. So at the end of this, we'll have taken that scheduled money and made it real. It'll actually be affecting their account, affecting their balance. It'll be a real aid payment transaction that's on their profile. These steps, basically the process from this point is just to advance to the next stage. You can make any notes that you need to and just keep advancing to the next stage until, as a financial aid person, you typically won't be able to advance anymore. Of course, federal guidelines have that handoff that takes place between the financial aid office and, say, your business finance office. So we're going to just step through that process totally to the end there. And you'll see here that now this last step is a little bit different. Here's where we're able to actually set the posted date. Then we have the option to either notify students about this award by email or not. And then you can see that there are certain variables showing up here. So like student first name shows up. So this will come out even if we have a whole list of students here. This is going to be sent with Pamela's name there. It'll have Pamela's award and amount and all that. Once we have this all figured out, we're going to go ahead and complete the batch. Once I click that, now this money is real. It's on Pamela's profile. Okay, so on Pamela's profile, you can see we've got we're just being able to see here that this is posted, etc., all that good stuff. Let's go look at her dashboard. And you can see that now she has an aid payment here. You would see the student's balance, decreased by that amount. In this case, the students ended up with a credit balance here. Just a couple more steps, and I'm going to kind of rehash real quick. We've gone ICER to aid application, then we've gone awards and disbursements on a student's profile, then we've entered them into we've synced them after we've got those awards and disbursements in place. Then we've entered them into a batch, and then we've actually posted that aid there. The last real step there will be refunds. Refunding credit balances, making aid refunds directly to students is pretty straightforward. So we'll look at that right now, and then we'll look at refunds to sources. So once you have either a credit balance on a student's profile or just an unapplied payment or an unapplied aid payment in this situation, you can click refund credit balance right here. And then we can look at refund source, and we can choose how exactly we want to refund this. If we choose federal aid, we can just go $2,000, and then we'll refund that money, and it will just be a refund in terms of federal aid there. And then this amount would conform to whatever available amount they have to refund. We could also be really specific. So we can say, I just want to show the Pell itself. So if we're refunding $1,000 of Pell, then we would set the refund source to Pell, $1,000 in there. We would choose exactly how we want to manage some of the details here, where we're paying this amount out of, all that. And then we would hit save. Okay, but what you can see happened here is that we had, under our recent transactions here, we have an aid payment, and then we have an aid refund to student. Okay, so their balance has been adjusted by that amount that we've actually refunded out to them. Now let's go ahead and have a look at refunds to source. It's a little bit different. It's going to start here on the student's profile on the financial aid tab. And then we're going to go here to the award, and you would do this for any awards that you need to refund to source, and we would click refund to source. Okay, you can see just a few details. We're going to go ahead and refund $1,000. Student withdrew, and for whatever reason, they need to send back $1,000 here. So we're going to enter that amount. The date that we have set there will work for us, and then we will save there. Now you'll see that we have initiated a refund to source. So let's go up to financial aid, and then into disbursement batches right here. We're going to click new batch. But this time, instead of batch type disbursement, we're going to choose refund to source. Okay, and because we have a much different date there, we're going to have to open that up a little bit. And then we get Pamela's refund to source coming up here. You can see all the amounts, everything looks good. We're going to create this batch. Now we've created the batch. It's really easy. There are just some very basic steps here. We're going to click advance to next stage. We're going to choose to post this to the student's account. We're going to send them an email as well. So we're going to say advance to next stage. That all looks good. And then we're going to complete the batch. That has initiated the funds being refunded to the source right there. We'll go and click back to Pamela's profile. You can see that these changes have all been posted. We can go back to the dashboard, the financial dashboard there, and then you can see that we've got all of those transactions recorded right there. That takes us in depth through the basic process of working with a DoED integrated financial aid setup. We've got ICERs coming into the system via SEG. Those ICERs are being associated, linked to student profiles. Doing that and importing the ICER is creating an aid application on the student's profile. Once you've got things squared away there for the student, you're going to be able to go in and create awards and disbursements on their profile and on the profiles of any other students who are receiving aid. Once you've done that, you can sync those awards to COD. You'll get responses back from COD, and then you'll be able to deal with any rejections, get everything figured out there so that all your awards are accepted and ready to go. Then as you approach those disbursement dates, you're going to include those students and their disbursements there in specific disbursements. You're going to walk through that process that we saw. You're going to do the handoff from financial aid to financial admin or student billing, somebody on that side. They'll finish the batch, post that to student accounts. Now the students have that money on their profiles. Once you've got that all done, we've got those amounts on a student's profile, you can refund both to the student and then also to source, which we just saw. Okay, there are more ins and outs to this. Again, what I'm able to show you here is not exactly what you're going to see when you have things set up. But this should give you a good idea of how things work when you're managing aid here with the DoED aid integration in place. Feel free to check out the knowledge base, which has articles with more details here. We'll link some of the more pertinent articles in the description of this video. You'll be able to check those out there. Also, since you're watching us here on a video, you might be on our YouTube channel, feel free to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And then also that little bell that comes up, ding, 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 you'll be able to click that baby and get notifications whenever we post a new video like this. We also post videos about certain feature updates that come across, and then videos that are useful for you to send to faculty or students to help them log in or whatever. So all kinds of content here, not just really long videos about financial aid in Populi like we did today. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for using Populi. Have a great day.